Next thing up is the shoulder straps. You can see I'm deviating from the pattern a little because the pattern I made that was very close to the historical model I used just didn't work on my body. That's just something that happens. If you do a, let's say, exact or almost exact replica of something, you will have to make adjustments. It's just... people's bodies look a lot different now. For one, we're all about 20 centimeters higher than the people back then, so I had to make this thing a lot larger than the original measurements, because it would have looked really silly otherwise. And another thing is the shoulders. My shoulders just don't work that way. And I'm going to make this a bit narrower, the shoulder strap, because this is really wide now. This is going to look ridiculous, so I will have to open up the seams I made here and cut bits off, and I will have to cut bits off here, but first I'm going to attach them so I get a sense of how wide I want them to be. I've attached the shoulder straps. Now I'm going to open up these stitches here, which are, by the way, I looked it up, called blanket stitch. It's similar to a buttonhole stitch. I think I'm still going to keep calling them sling stitches because you make a sling and then you pull the thread through, so it totally makes sense. So I've marked with needles where I'm going to cut. I'm going to cut bit by bit. First I'm going to open up one of these, and then I'm going to stitch here, and then I'm going to cut these bits and stitch, just so things don't fray too badly while I'm working. And this is going to take a while, I think. I'm pretty much done with this part now. I think it turned out rather nicely. As you can see, all the boning's inside, and I've been very thorough making sure nothing frays, because with linen that is definitely a possibility. And with these sleeves, I made these extra seams in the back because that looks somewhat similar to the original. Although I think in the original it's more like a felt seam or something. But you can't really tell because none of the images I have gives you that close of a close-up. And I didn't do this in the front because the front didn't have anything extra, but I attached these bits with invisible seams again. And this is the inside layer I'm going to do. As you can see, it's just the same size, use the same pattern. What I'm going to do now, I'm going to start from the middle seam. I'm going to make one there. Then I'm going to put it right onto the jumps, and I'm going to measure and see with this seam if these seams on the sides align with those underneath. And I'm going to do this bit by bit. Make one seam, measure, make the next seam, measure, and I hope that in the end it's going to fit like a glove. We'll see about that. I'll keep you updated. So this is what the inside looks like right now. Oh damn it, I forgot to have this one. Yeah, I'll still have to do this. Anyway, I've put it onto the actual jumps and I attached one half with needles to the other side. What I'm going to do now is along those lines I'm going to make a couple of stitches. Then I'm going to take the needles out and see if this thing lies completely flat, or as flat as you can be if you've got shoulder straps and stuff. So yeah, after a couple of stitches, I'm making way too many stitches. All this hemming on the inside, this is just my pet peeve, because I want nothing to fray, even on the inside of a garment. Most people don't even do that. Once you've got lining, you don't need to hem everything. I'm just crazy that way. I'm kind of thinking that my clothes should survive an apocalypse. But that's just me. I've mostly attached the inner layer. And I will still need to cut off bits of fabric because you can see here it's kind of sticking out. I'm going to trim that. What I have not done yet is the back side of the shoulder straps. I'm going to kind of wrap that in and attach it and then make a seam from the outside. And I'm going to cut here, wrap the seam allowance on the inside and then attach it here, again via a rather complicated seam. I've already wrapped it in on this side, so that's happening next. So one half's pretty much done, and the other one is still open in two places. Going to explain how to do this a little later. This is really complicated to explain, so I've been trying to put it off. And I already closed up the shoulder strap. I made this seam from the outside, and next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to explain how to do this by doing it on the other side on camera. I don't know how well that's going to work out, sewing with one hand and two needles and holding the camera at the same time, but we'll see. And then we're going to do this one. That's going to be a bit, yeah, fun times. This is the back seam of the lining of the shoulder strap, and as you can see, this is the only part that isn't sewn closed yet. There's two needles in here, one in one side and one in the other. And there's one thread going through both of them. So if I pull the needle through and I do so evenly, it's going to pull together the seam. And we'll have to do so bit by bit and a bit more carefully, because I have no idea how I'm going to hold the camera steady, sewing with my right hand and holding with my left. So yeah, we'll see about it. Okay. Starting off, two needles and one thread that goes through both of them. Okay, this is where we want the seam to start. So I take the first needle, I push it through the fabric and I pull it through just a little, not too much. I take the other needle and I push it through the exact opposite side of the fabric. Yep. Always watch your needles. If you confuse your needles, you're going to mess the entire thing up. So okay, I'm still holding the same needle, and I take this from the bottom and I push it through the fabric on the other side, exactly where the other thread that comes from the top comes out, like this. Again, pull. See that what happened? That's what happens if you don't watch your threads. They go wherever they want. And see, if you pull now, it's pulling the seam close. Okay, you put this away somewhere in the fabric, just to make sure it stays where it should. Now you take the other needle, the one that comes from the top, and you see it comes out here, and you push it through the fabric right down here where the other thread comes out, like this. Okay, you can mostly see my thumb now. Okay, now you can see it comes out. Occasionally pull on the thread to make sure it pulls this thing close. Okay, so, and you're still holding the same needle. It's coming out at the bottom, and you push it through the fabric again, the top where the other thread comes out. And after you've successfully done that, pull a little and you put it away. So it's really simple. You've got two needles, one thread, and you always take the one that's coming out from the top fabric, and you make one stitch through the bottom fabric and then back to the top. And then you switch needles, because the other one's coming from the top now. Make one in the bottom layer, one in the top layer, and then you switch needles again. And this way you're going to end up with a really neat seam that you're sewing from the outside of the fabric, and it's going to look rather nice. It looks like you did it from the left side of the fabric. So this works a lot better if you're not looking through a camera screen. This is where the lacing is going to be. So I've decided to end the lining on this seam, and the thing we're going to do now is a bit similar to the other seam we just closed. I'm using one really long silk thread for this and 2 needles that I've pulled it through. So we're starting here. So as you can see, I haven't attached this to the layer below because we need a bit of flexibility for this kind of seam. And we start on the other side to see where the seam ends, which is right here. It's kind of hard to see right now. So pulling this through, you can see it a little bit better on the other side. And then we pull. And with that same needle, we can pick up a bit of the fabric. And this is a bit more difficult because the thread is a lot longer, so it gets tangled more easily. Okay, let's leave this here for the moment. Then we take the other needle. The thread is still coming out on this side. We go through here, come out again here. Ideally exactly where that stitch ends. Yeah, right here. And we pull it through again. And I'm making a lot of knots here, which shouldn't be happening. Alright, okay. So, same needle again. Pick up a bit of fabric, about 1 stitch long. And you can see it should be about as long as the stitch on the other side of the fabric. Oops. And see, if you've got really long threads to work with, they form these loops and they get caught on everything, so yeah, be sure that you don't entangle them. At least not too much. Okay, so let's leave this one alone. Pick up the other needle again. As you can see, it's coming out from the lower fabric here. So we push it through to the other side. And now this is where we need to pay attention because there is already a seam here. So if you want this to be more or less invisible, just stitch exactly along the seam you made earlier, and then it won't be too obvious that you stitched along there twice. Coming out again here. And again, go to the lower layer of the fabric, pick up a little bit, pull it through, and leave the needle alone. Pick up the other one again, go through the layer to the other side, and see here I've got to be really careful. I think that's wrong. Yeah, it should come out here. So this is a bit fiddly if you want it to look really nice. Back in again. And well, we're ending up here. This is not right. Okay, yeah, to go back in again. Alright, this time it's working. This is all way too bright here. And again, through the fabric. And this is really confusing. You have to try this for yourself, because I really can neither show it in a really comprehensive way nor explain it very well, because these kinds of things you only get it once you're in there in the fabric with the needles and you see how it's all pulling together and you realize what kind of things you have to look out for, like the entangling of the threads, etc. You only learn this kind of stuff by doing. And you go on this way until you have the entire thing connected. And from this side, the seam will be absolutely invisible. And I think that's just a really nice touch when everything looks very finished and polished and there aren't too many seams that you can see. That's what that looks like. I think that's rather neat, and it gives the thing a bit more stability. I already put bias binding on these parts here. Already flattened them too, and they're still kind of bumpy, so when you're trying to take straight bias tape and make kind of a round seam with it, this is just going to happen. There's nothing you can do about it. This is how I closed them up. And I already put in some of those. Not all though, because I moved in the meantime and I had a lot of stuff to do. No time for hammering things. I should have taken the bigger ones. Thought the smaller ones would look cuter and kind of more dainty, because the entire thing isn't meant to look like your regular corset. But the small ones aren't really made to go through so many layers of fabric, so they look kind of shitty. But no, I started and I have to finish this. And there's one mistake I always make. Don't think you can quite see it. You can see it a little bit here. Never sew with dirty fingers. I ate a carrot and now you can see where I pushed the needle into the fabric. It's slightly orange because I'm dumb and I didn't wash my fingers. You can learn from my mistakes. The last step, punching in all the other holes. And that will be it then. Then I just have to buy some more ribbon to pull through it and it's done. Hooray!